Welcome to the SecureWorld Sessions. We are a brand new cybersecurity podcast that is all about access. Access to people and access to ideas that can impact your personal cybersecurity career and help you secure your organization.
Access granted.
My name is Bruce Sussman, Director of Content at SecureWorld, and I am your podcast host. In today's session, we are sharing some free tools you can use in security presentations, plus uncovering recent research from our exclusive podcast partner, Trend Micro. First, though, it's our featured interview. We are opening the file on Princeton University with the story of a new 3-year cybersecurity journey at an extremely old Ivy League school.
Princeton, Bruce, is the 4th oldest school in the country. It was founded in 1746. It's one of 9 what are known as colonial colleges that actually started before the American Revolution, before there was a United States.
That is David Sherry, Chief Information Security Officer at Princeton University, where he's been the CISO for several years now. I spoke with David at our SecureWorld New York Cybersecurity Conference, and David delivered a keynote there along with Tara Schaufler, who is the Security Awareness and Training Program Manager at Princeton. She's also a key part of our interview today because the two of them, you can tell they work well together, and they describe what they set out to accomplish. They wanted to make security at Princeton both cultural and programmatic. And they believe they've had a significant impact on the campus's security mindset. Now, think about securing a college or a university. It is like securing a city. Princeton, for example, has sporting venues, museums, fire and police services, students from all over the world connecting to the university network, and professors and researchers doing incredible things with very valuable data. Let's go now to the SecureWorld New York, and you're going to hear some collaboration happening in the background of my interview with David and Tara. My first question was to David. When you came to Princeton as the CISO a few years ago, what did you do first?
So as I stated in my talk, Bruce, it was really just assessing for a few months, and I found that security was just thought it was being done. And it was really the IT people who were responsible for it. It wasn't across the campus that everyone had a small responsibility for making sure that Princeton University stayed secure and that reputation was stellar. So I had to come up with a way that could ensure that everyone across the campus knew that they had that responsibility of being part of a culture that would maintain the security of Princeton. And I could see that that was a need and that was something that could change. Tara was actually, as a longtime Princeton employee, 15 years, I believe.
That's right.
And she might be able to speak what her thought was before this crazy person from Massachusetts came down and started working at Princeton.
That sounds good. Yeah, what were you seeing, Tara?
Well, as David mentioned, it was not a vast wasteland. We mentioned that during our talk. Security, IT security was done well. But it was not in the forefront. And I think we've really brought that to the forefront for people. People know that we exist. We had people before who were doing information security, but it was never really communicated.
Correct.
And now we have a lot of resources out there. We are on campus a lot, and we interact and have built so many partnerships that there's a very big difference that we are much more out front and center.
Right. And how did you approach this, right? So you wanted to go from what you had to what you have now, which we'll get to in a minute, but how did you approach this idea of changing the culture in essentially a city, as you've described it?
Well, Tara mentioned just getting out there, putting the group together, getting the buy-in from the executive team, getting the buy-in from a very supportive CIO, and hiring the right team. So now we're doing training. Now we're doing better engineering of our back end. Now we're doing risk assessments. And just the process of doing a risk assessment changed the culture. People now realize, oh, I do have something that's worthy enough that I have. And just by going through those risk assessments that was sometimes could be painful, we flipped the model around. We focused first on what you are doing well that we want you to keep doing. And in places that may not be doing so well, we just said, you're not really hitting best practice, let us help you get there. So that was a big change right off the bat on how people looked at our group.
And one of the things that I mentioned during our talk as well was the eye-openers, things like the red team engagement, things like the fishbowl, and just getting out there and talking to people about the threat being real. This is not something, unless you work in security, that you think about on a daily basis. But getting out there and getting people to understand that they are, in fact, a target and that they do, in fact, have things worth stealing, very, very important and eye-opening. And it gets kind of perks people up and suddenly they pay more attention.
That's right. Well,
Yeah, that's interesting. And what was the fishbowl thing? Fill in the listeners what the fishbowl was you were talking about.
Yeah, so this was one of those things that David tasked me with early on. He said we need to have a place that folks can go to get the latest phishing alerts for the university. We need to educate them on the threat of phishing, have them be able to go to one place, and also play a role in helping to protect our campus. He's mentioned that we want them to feel like the guardians at the gate. And this is a great way that if they see something that looks fishy, they can go out to the fishbowl, say, hey, you know what? Oh, it was reported. Or, hey, you know what? This looks a little funny. I want to help protect the campus, and I'm going to report this.
That's really cool. Okay, that's great. Now, I know one of the challenges that you mentioned, David, during your talk, is that at a university, you really can't come in and mandate this is how we're doing security, which I think a lot of security leaders are in that same boat. How did you overcome that obstacle? And because, I mean, obviously professors and everybody that's there, right, they need to collaborate like right now. They don't need anything slowing them down. So how did you overcome this?
Right. Yeah, we always say that we cannot hinder anything on the university. We have to securely enable it because professors are working sometimes much faster than we can react. So it was really, I talked about getting the leadership on board, but it was those small wins and being very, very open to hearing what they needed to get done and then coming up with the best way to get it done. So when you're talking for staff and for students, it's a little easier to just sell the product or sell the solution or sell the documentation and have it roll through. The faculty is a much different area. We've had great success by forming a deep and realistic and transparent partnership with our computer science department. And we bring our solutions to them. We're thinking about this for pin length. We're thinking about password managers. We're thinking about an architectural change. And where you can get the chair of the computer science department to buy in and possibly even say at a faculty meeting, hey, this is the way to go because it's going to protect Princeton for another 273 years. That's a good thing. So it's actually recognizing that we exist for the faculty and not the other way around.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And developing those alliances and almost like advocates within the organization is what I hear you saying. Yeah, that's great. Tara, will you give me a couple other examples of how you guys got creative with security awareness?
I absolutely can share a couple things. One of the things that I think is so incredibly important, number one, is making sure that you have the audience. So piggybacking on events. So we've done that, making sure that we're out there and bring our table out to places where we know there's going to be traffic. But people are still not going to come to your table unless you have something interesting. So the Cyber Wheel of Fortune, that has been really fun.
Nice.
People love the wheel. They love to spin it. We ask them questions. It gets them talking. Next thing you know, they're asking you questions about their home network. So it's been really wonderful that.
We actually had a complaint at an event we at that too many people were stopping at our table to ask about security.
Yeah, there was a line. Which was fantastic.
And you said, I will definitely take those complaints, send them my way, right?
We also did some during Data Privacy Day. We were up on campus with our web cookie cornhole. I had these little cookies that you could toss, and it was a cornhole game, and again, asking people questions, and it was don't feed your personal information to the internet monster, and it was trying to throwing the cookies out. So it was kind of a silly thing, but it definitely got students' attention, and they wanted to come over and see if they could feed the monster. So it was some fun stuff. So just silly stuff like that. Sometimes we've done movie events where we've rented out a local theater. We
laptop
had
stickers.
laptop stickers. Students love.
Most creative laptop stickers you've ever
They're
seen.
very cute.
Well, what do they look like? Yeah, describe what.
We had one with a cute little tiger on it that said pause and
Nice.
think about privacy. We have another one for the fishbowl with just advertising the fishbowl, but more to come on that.
That's really cool.
Certainly a fun thing. But the movie events have been really great, and we did one that was a 80s themed event, which was very popular, and we also did a little contest with that for people
Now-
to dress up in their 80s attire.
And are you showing a movie about cybersecurity?
We were,
or-
yeah.
Oh.
So we showed war games, actually.
Oh, yeah. Hey, that's a good
Yeah,
one.
and we talked about, afterwards we facilitated a discussion about how information security changed or didn't change throughout the years. So it was actually pretty fun.
I think I remember reading an article one time about a bunch of ways that war games turned out to be true.
Yeah.
So it was great fun.
Yeah, that's super.
Yeah.
That's super fantastic. Okay, great. So that's very creative. Now let's talk about you've shifted the culture, and I know one of the goals was not just to make security a culture, but also programmatic. So, David, how does that look and operate? What does it feel like?
Sure. So programmatic is so important. Part of the reputation of security departments where they were the Department of No is because they were brought into a project, a decision, documentation, a contract at the 11th hour. Sometime when something was going through change control, security was hearing about it for the first time. That is the worst situation for a security department to be in. So by making things programmatic and having a step that asks about security, even if security isn't necessary, but asking early in the process from HR decisions to contract decisions to audit and compliant decisions to new software, new hosting facilities, just getting us earlier has reduced risk to the university and extended our impact across the university. People now know they can come to us earlier. We're good partners, we come up with easy solutions, and we make their project go smoother because they're talking about us earlier in the game.
That's fantastic. Where do you go from here? What is the plan? And do you need to do more work? I mean, you've obviously come a long way in the last 3 years. What are you looking forward at right now?
Well, this man's going to make me work harder, I'm sure.
Probably. Yeah. The interesting thing, Bruce, is if you looked at what our responsibilities were 3 years ago and depicted it as a circle, our circle continues to get bigger. The university is asking more of us. The CIO is putting more responsibilities and more tasks on us because he sees that we're being successful in this. So our next 3 years, we actually have an off-site retreat next week that we're going to be talking about what the security plan will look like for 2021 and 22. We know that the university now looks to us as a resource to make sure that their reputation will remain stellar and we remain number one, perhaps for 10, 11, 12, 13 years. We're excited about that. And I really can't answer what exactly that's going to look like. But boy, if you have us back in a couple of months, I might be able to.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll have to check in after the retreat. That's great. Well, David Sherry and Tara Schaufler, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your story of this journey with cybersecurity at Princeton.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And now we are going to unpack some research about threats and risks to complex IoT environments. Things like smart buildings, for example, or even a smart home. Now, a CIE, or complex IoT environment, consists of at least 10 IoT devices that are functionally chained together and integrated into an environment using some sort of IoT automation platform. So think of the IoT automation platform as kind of a brain of sorts. And Trend Micro set up smart home labs and tested possible threat scenarios. First of all, they found the automation server is where all the automation rules that govern the function and interaction of devices of this network, of this IoT network, are stored. So they managed to get full read-write control to modify and update those rules. And then when they had that, they could command smart locks to unlock doors. They could control sensors to an alarm system. They found automation systems or cameras could be set up to send the attacker snapshots and information about activity inside the home. This could happen via supported messaging applications like Slack channels, for example. And I know at our family's house, our security system tells us there's a door open here, it's been open for 5 minutes, or there's a window that just closed there. What if hackers could alter this feed or send that information to them and not just our family? Or think about that at your organization. So researchers then look to extend the possibility of these types of attacks in a smart office or building environment. And that leads us to what we like to call our Trend Micro Top 3, or the top 3 takeaways from this study on complex IoT environments. Number 1, researchers say you need to be checking automation rule files and make backups of them, so you know if anything changes. Number 2, practice good password hygiene for every component of the complex IoT environment. And number 3, be knowledgeable about the settings of each component that is involved. You need to think of it as both individually and holistically as a system. Now, I'll put a link to this research in the show notes, and I want to say thank you to Trend Micro for being our exclusive podcast partner. Now, it's time for our SecureWorld update. Now, this is where we bring a member of the SecureWorld team onto the episode to talk about what is going on behind the scenes here. And today we are talking about resources for your presentations on security, if you ever have to make those, and who doesn't, right, at some point. SecureWorld Marketing Manager Drew Hall is here. And Drew, I understand you've been doing some analytics to see what people are reading on our website, which is secureworldexpo.com.
That's right. Of course, always interested in seeing what is moving the needle, what are the hot topics, what's helping people the most, and people vote with their clicks and
Right.
website traffic. And so with a close eye on that, I'm looking at our most read story, actually, of this year, and since it published last year, has the far and away the leader in the clubhouse.
So this is number one.
Number one.
Drum roll, please.
It's very helpful for any presentation that you might be doing. It's called 7 Live Cyber Attack Maps. And we'll put a link to it in the show notes so you can all access that. And it's really catchy content. It's a live, real-time visualization from 7 different cybersecurity companies that are tracking all of these global cyber threats and threat vectors and where they're coming from and where they're aimed at.
So this would be great for like if you're presenting to the board, or even if you're just trying to get, say, the organization's attention that these threats are real and they're happening, right?
Right. It really gives you a visualization of the scale of the threats that we're up against. There's, it may not be a lot of real useful information beyond that.
Right.
But, as far as getting down in the weeds, but just to show the overall scope and to give a visualization perhaps to someone that's less technical, it can really drive home that point.
Yeah, well, and that is the rest of the business, generally speaking, so that's
Sure.
really cool.
Sure.
I know one of them is kind of a funny or joke type.
Well,
map.
it's serious, but it's at the end. The last one is from a company called ThreatButt, which, believe it or not, is a cybersecurity vendor.
And when you have "but" in your name as a company, that's very interesting. But anyway, go ahead.
Yes, they can laugh at themselves. Cybersecurity is a serious industry, but it's stressful as well. And to be able to laugh a little bit at the scenario and the situation that we're all facing is important, I suspect. But ThreatButt, it comes complete with some great sound effects, including pew, 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 and other such cyber attack sounds that we all know actually happen right in the background as these attacks are happening.
I love it. That is great. So, all right. So that's one thing to check out, the 7 live cyber attack maps. What's another story that, as you put it, people are voting, security readers on our website are voting with their clicks. What else rises to the top?
Well, people like sticky content like quotes, right? So quotes can be used in so many different ways, from a PowerPoint presentation to something you want to put up on the break room wall. It's inspirational, or it's something that kind of grabs your attention, a different way of looking at an insight or a security view on best practices or something like that. So we've got access to all these leaders that are sharing keynotes and web conferences and really giving their great deep dives on these different areas of cybersecurity. And so we collected those into what we call a top 20 cybersecurity quotes that you need to hear. And these address different topics that people might want to just grab and go ahead and paste right into what they're using, attribute it to the person that's shared it, and
that's great.
help make the case.
Mm-hmm. And is there one that stood out to you? Because I know you mentioned that article before to me, so I'm sure you've read it a few times.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And the one that I like a lot is from Dr. Larry Ponemon, who's the chairman of Ponemon Institute. Great researcher on cybersecurity and privacy, well-known, and he has spoken at many of our events over the years. He spoke to us recently about insider threat, the insider threat risk, which is a growing and hot topic. We have so many external threats bombarding us, but we've got those insider threats as well, and they can be pretty risky, pretty damaging. So his quote here is, "We discovered in our research that insider threats are not viewed as seriously as external threats, like a cyber attack. But when companies had an insider threat, in general, they were much more costly than external incidents. This was largely because the insider threat is smart and has the skills to hide the crime for months, for years, sometimes forever."
Wow, that is a chilling quote. I mean, that just drives home the significance of that. And you're right. We almost always have an insider threat session on the conference, but so much of the rest of the day, which is driven by the local community, what do we talk about? The external threats. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a great point to drive that inside for looking for threats there. All right, rounding up the top three, what do you have for another hot article that could be useful for presentations or things like that?
Well, here's another fun one. I mean, we all like memes, right?
Oh, I love memes.
Social media world that we're in. Memes are funny, but they make the point.
Yes.
Through humor, they can really cut through some of the noise and drive home a point. So we've got a top 10 cybersecurity memes article that's quite popular, shared a lot on social media. It's good for a few laughs. Has appearances by Grumpy Cat, Kermit the Frog.
Oh, Kermit's in there.
Rodney Dangerfield, and Darth Vader. So I won't spoil.
Do we need to say anything else? I mean, sold.
Sold. The memes will make the point themselves, and I won't spoil any of them beyond that.
That's great.
Check it out.
Yeah, that is great, Drew. Well, thank you so much, and I will put a link to all three of those articles in the show notes so you can find them.
That sounds great.
Thank you so much, Drew. Great to have you on the show. And thank you, by the way, for joining us on this episode of the SecureWorld Sessions, whether you're listening while you're doing some chores at home or maybe you're stuck in traffic somewhere. Also, we really appreciate David Sherry and Tara Schaufler from Princeton University for sharing about their cybersecurity journey to inform the rest of us. That's so cool. If you like the podcast, will you please subscribe and share it with someone in security? And if you have feedback or topic suggestions, we continue to be all ears since we're a newer cybersecurity podcast. media@secureworldexpo.com is the address. Next time, we're interviewing Brian Goring. He is the director of the Zero Day Initiative. ZDI, as it's sometimes called, is the world's largest vendor-agnostic bug bounty program, and we are going to get the inside scoop on what's happening in the bug bounty space. You'll want to check that out. I'm Bruce Sussman, your host of the SecureWorld Sessions, and we'll catch up with you on the next episode.